This is Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. On the show, you'll hear from innovators in the food space. We'll have disruptive conversations with people from around the globe who are taking the lead on topics like food sustainability, ending world hunger, food security, and so much more. I'm your host, Paul Newnham. In today's episode of Future Fork, we're doing something a little bit different. As we prepare for a big 2025, we're looking back on some of our favourite interviews from 2024. And in today's episode, we're taking a special look at one of our favourite subjects, beans. We've had a lot of great conversations about this subject last year, and it's one that I'm personally very passionate about. So today you're going to hear from different people who share their insights when it comes to the power of beans. To start things out, let's hear from Eve Turow-Paul. Eve is the author and executive director of the Food for Climate League. In this clip, Eve discusses why she's so passionate about beans.
First and foremost, I think that beans are a really great reminder that we don't need to reinvent the wheel. And I think whether it's in food or in any other industry, I think we're always pulled towards the bright, new, shiny innovation. But sometimes the solution already exists. And in this case, it's a whole, nutritious, widely accessible, culturally relevant food.
It's kind of
called beans.
Amazing. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, when you really look at it, you're like, oh, it's good for the farmer. It's good for the business person who's going to make a great profit. And it's really great for the consumer. So there's that part of it, which I find really interesting, which is a reminder, right, that we don't need to always try to reinvent the wheel. The solution might be here already. It might exist. The other part of this work that I find really interesting is, again, we at Food for Climate League, our team has taken a step back and said, okay, well, how do people currently think about beans? What stories do they tell themselves? What is motivating them or demotivating them to purchase them? And what we found is that a lot of people associate beans with something that's just not special. The ubiquity has actually caused it to be relegated to the back of the pantry and forgotten.
It's like wallpaper.
Yeah, exactly. It's just there, right? And for low-income populations, we found that it's actually associated with poverty. And so people want to move past beans. So we have a team that's working on creating alternative narratives for beans. And this is, again, through one-on-one interviews, talking to many, many, many different people about what motivates them to eat in general, asking them to think about the history and their experience with beans, their interactions with it, and also, again, their biases and what they tell themselves about it. And we've tested multiple narratives. We tested narratives around sustainability, around protein, around general health, local identities, and also around food justice. And what we found so far, and this is tentative results based on our first test, but the rising narrative that people seem attracted to right now is protein, which makes a lot of sense because it fits into all these other food trends, and especially Americans, we're protein crazed, even though we over-consume protein, I believe.
Protein-obsessed.
Protein-obsessed, completely. But our results also showed that amongst African-American respondents, the message that rose to the very top is about food justice and food equity, and beans being a symbol of a nutritious whole food that is accessible to all.
And I mean, that kind of insight, you could be spending a huge amount of energy, effort, marketing something or trying to communicate something and just not hitting the mark. You're almost wasting time. Whereas with these insights, you're able to actually go, wow, there's a whole different new way of thinking now about how are people engaging with beans or any food group really, but then why do they either lean towards it or pull back from it? And how does this play in? And so it enables more targeting, potential campaigns and potential focus and lots of learning.
I do think of what we do as the nerdiest version of marketing and advertising. I did have a previous life in content marketing and an agency in New York City. And I was able to see how these large brand campaigns and slogans come about. And all too often, it's not informed by rigorous behavioral sciences. Maybe it's a focus group. Many behavioral scientists will tell you that focus groups aren't that great because we're all biased by what other people will say. And particularly at the nexus of food and climate, there's an intention-action gap. And so when you ask people, well, what would motivate you? What would you like to see? people say, oh, sure, I'll spend an extra $1 for something that's good for the planet. But when push comes to shove, that's not the reality. And that's not the reality, not because people don't care, they do care, but people are facing so many other pressures on their lives, and they're trying to pay their bills. They're dealing with inflation. They're dealing with the pending doom of the climate crisis. They're dealing with health issues, with school tuition. There's rising rates of mental health crisis. And people are motivated by what brings them a sense of control and a sense of community, a sense of belonging, safety. People are not chasing after altruism right now because they're simply not well enough to do so. And we need to start empathizing with where people are. Don't trust what they tell you is going to motivate them, and meet them where they are.
Next, you'll hear from Jean Claude Rubyogo. Jean Claude is the director of the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, also known as PABRA. When I caught up with Jean Claude, I asked him about PABRA and how they're working to improve beans for everyone.
PABRA is a Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, which brings together the researchers. That means the international researchers like from the Alliance of Biodiversity International and CIAT, who are working on beans as well. And then the 31 national research institutions, organizations across 31 countries in Africa, Sub-Saharan Africa particularly, and the value chain actors, because our research is value chain oriented, is thinking about what drives the consumer, what drives the other people within the value chain. They are member of the alliance, the Pan-African Bean Research Alliance, so that they can guide the research, provide the feedback, but also be part of that research continuum. And then we have several NGOs and civil society supporting the communities, because beans has several good benefits. We are talking beans for food. We are talking beans for also when farmers sell, because there's somebody who needs beans in town or somewhere, they make money. There's entire value chain, people can make cash. But also soil fertility improvement, good for planet and soil. There are also people even who use it for animal feed. And then there are also people who look at beans to improve the marginalized or the women, the youth, because beans are short duration, 65 days to 90, you harvest. There's no other crop. And you plant 1 kilogram, you get 20. Average or sometimes 15. So beans have multiple purpose, and that's attract several people who are interested. So the alliance brings all these interests together, and we define a research based on their interests, on country demand, and then we move forward. So the alliance is really a multi-stakeholder, which combine both research which is demanded by the users, but also those users who use the research products to go to the scale. So we contribute our research products, our knowledge, our smart partnership and capacity building, and other people say, wow, this is an ingredient for us to go further, to expand what we want to do. So PABRA brings all these actors together. We have also started getting the financial services, because once you have a value chain, definitely people need cash. Farmers need to be paid on time, so the grain trader has to pay them. So in that case, nobody can have $1 million to pay farmers. So we're bringing the financial institutions together. We're bringing, of course, government, either policymakers or government resources as well, because ownership of the country, that's the goodness of PABRA. PABRA is based on country ownership. The 31 countries own it. You have seen here in Rwanda, the national program own what you get. It's a matter of say, well, we have a partner who is interested, or they can also call me. So we don't have a bigger and smaller in this partnership. All of us, we are equal. We know we have to contribute to make the network and the alliance work going forward. So that's what PABRA is.
And breeding beans, talk to me just for people that aren't sure what that means. And what does that mean?
Breeding beans, it's an amazing work. It's really looking on different combination of traits. It's a science, but also is listening, is engaging. It's a science because you are dealing with genetic materials which have a trait. A yellow, it's yellow because that's trait. A red is red because of that trait. High productivity is influenced by the trait. Disease and pest resistance is, so a breeder understands that complexity of genetics and environment and how the beans, but also you also combine with the consumers. Currently, in the past, when we grew up, beans were beans. We didn't care about firewood. No. They could ask us, go and get firewood, and they will cook maybe 3 or 4 hours with the tree stones. Now, the population is urban. People want also to enjoy life. Nobody want to cook for long. So we are breeding for short cooking time. So that we reduce people's time in the kitchen. We reduce cutting firewood. That's also contribute to reduction of emissions and climate change. So you take into consideration, when I grew up again, the growing season were longer. We have reliable rains, not very erratic. So this time, we need variety which are climate resilience. And this change of climate change comes with the disease, comes with the pest, comes with the water deficit or excess water. So all that requires a breeder to go and look at it. So you deal with the consumer, good consumption trait, high palatability. Now people say less gas, flatulence, cooking time, the color. And then you go back also to have a better yield, because the farmer can only be incentivized by better yield, because what they put in and what they get out. But also, when they sell, it's sold at a higher price. So that will allow the farmer to invest in the farms. So you can see how breeders is a combination of all these elements, both natural science, but also understanding the consumer. So market intelligence, consumer intelligence, and then you can develop the right product. Without the right product, because breeding is very important and it's long term. It's not something you can wake up and say, I'm going to get a variety. No, there are people who think, yes, I can make a crossway A and B and that's it. No, you get a different one. And you need again to do another cross, back cross until you get a product you are looking for. Without right product, which is that variety, then farmers will not invest. So even when you say, I'm going to develop a market, the market you develop it because you have the right variety. And that's long-term effort. We did appreciate the contribution of people who make that happen, who are patient, like Global Affairs Canada, USAID, ICR, BMGF, the government you have in Africa, who understand that breeding is not 1, 2 to 3, 4 years. No, it's a long term. Because PABRA is more now than 27 years. Can you imagine the donors are with us in that long period? Otherwise, the donors say, well, if I don't get a result in 3 years, you are gone. No, they know how long it takes. It's like a road under permanent construction. That's how breeding is. Because the challenge are too many, either biophysical, but also consumers' opportunities are emerging. So you need to fit in all that as well. So it's very enjoyable. And then you have also to have a seed systems to get these varieties out. Because if you don't have seed systems, that variety will not be useful. It's like building all this and you don't use it. You've invested 1 million in this house, but you don't use it or don't rent it. Wow. But for us, we have been very lucky. We get demand-led breeding, and now we have demand-led seed systems, and we're able to get the varieties out and make a big change.
Can you tell me what you're most proud of in the work that you do at PABRA?
It's a change of livelihood, change of business. I like when research, what we do, what my colleagues and I do, get the right product, right innovation, and we share with other people. And then you will see a farmer who used to say, well, here I was eating beans once per week, but as a result of high productivity, high yield, I eat beans every day. I used to lack the moms say, well, my children didn't go to school. Now I can take them to school. Even clothes, farmers say, well, I was not happy with the clothes I have, but I bought now good clothes. Sometimes it's small, but it's big in their eyes. I used to have this house, which was maybe not well done or grass touched. Now I'm comfortable. I can also have even electricity. I visit several farmers who have changed. They have a gas in their house, biogas, or they have electricity. I can also see when I see business growing, like what I said in Ethiopia. When you see a factory processing beans and employing 20, 30 people directly, and others, maybe 100 who are indirect, and the value chain, as a result of a variety which has been released, how do you feel? You create a business opportunity, you create a livelihood as a result of that good breeding and research. So that's what makes us happy. That's what drives us to see really people interested in what we do. Their livelihood improves, better nutrition, better conditions in which they live in, and a better investment in their farms and in the beans they grow. So that's really something we are very proud of. I mean, we're talking about, we have now so far closer to 45 million farmers growing our varieties. and more than 300 enterprise, again, working with us and who are making business out of these varieties and our technologies. And you have majority of them are women. Almost 60% of these farmers are women who really have improved their conditions. And these entrepreneurs, again, a good number of them are women. So you can really empower the marginalized through beans and through other technologies. So that's what makes us very excited and keep on going day by day.
In this clip, I'm chatting to Devin De Wulf. Devin's the parade organizer in New Orleans, Louisiana, and the pioneer behind the Bean Parade. Beans are a big part of Devin's life, so we started at the beginning and explained how his journey with beans began.
So I'm a parade organizer in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I've created a bean parade. And we have grown over the years. It's been 15 years now. And we're also creating a community center / cultural space in New Orleans called Beanlandia, which is where we are today.
Amazing. So how did this all come about?
Yes, I grew up not eating beans, but then I lived in Brazil for a year when I was in college. And after a few months, I realized that I love beans. And later, I ended up coming to New Orleans after Katrina to volunteer. And when I got here, I realized two things very quickly. One, this place is like Brazil culturally. And two, they also love beans here. And since we have a carnival here in New Orleans, I just got it in my head to try to create a bean parade one day. And that was 15 years ago. We started really small. The first year we had 25 people. We glue beans onto jackets and things to make works of art, basically. And then we parade in the streets the day before Mardi Gras, which is always a Monday. And Monday is traditionally the day you would eat red beans and rice here in New Orleans. So it seemed like a good idea to make a bean parade on a Monday. And there's no bigger Monday than Lundi Gras for us here. So the bean parade has grown, and over the years, it's also become kind of a force for good, something that can support the community through COVID or through hurricanes, things like that. And that's what we think is the purpose, or as I call it, the beaning of life.
The beaning of life. I love it. And so you said that you didn't love beans. So tell us a little bit about where you're from and how you ended up here.
So I grew up in South Carolina, and my family beans weren't really part of our normal week-by-week diet, so I wasn't very used to them. I'd certainly had them as like typical American diet, like they're periodically in a chili or something like that, but it wasn't something I ever really thought about. And then living in Brazil, Brazilians eat beans twice a day, every day, pretty much. They're a constant. And after being exposed to that and just learning the varieties and all the recipes and all the different ways you can prepare them, they're now easily my favorite food. And I eat them every week, 5-6 times a week. My children love beans. I love cooking them. Soups, other bean dishes, things like cassoulet or red beans and rice, or it's an endless rabbit hole, honestly. And the fact that they're great for climate and the fact that they're great for health is, as we say here, lagniappe, which means the extra thing. The main thing is they're delicious, but they're also highly beneficial in other ways. So it's a food that I think people can get behind.
So how did the crew of Red Beans come about? How did it come into being?
So the first bean suit, as we call it, was actually a Halloween costume, because I was sitting in a bar one day trying to think of how I could make a good costume. Costuming in New Orleans is a really big part of the culture. Halloween is a really big deal here, and you have to have a handmade costume. So the idea just popped in my head. I love beans, and I should just make a costume of beans. And when I did that and I wore it out, the response, the average person on the street that saw me, the response was kind of ridiculous. It was as if I was famous or something. People were touching me, taking pictures of the jacket. Like it sparked joy in the people. And I think there's something in New Orleans, there's a love affair of beans because of our culinary history here. The red beans and rice are such a big part of our city's culture. And it just seemed like, oh, there's something there. And the other thing that was happening to me at that time was I was learning a lot about the carnival culture here. and some of the traditions that have been going on for centuries in our city. One in particular is called Mardi Gras Indian or Black Masking Indian, where these people hand sew these incredibly elaborate costumes, and they work all year on them basically to wear them on Mardi Gras. And the act of putting so much effort into a costume, into a suit, it creates its own kind of power, and it can be transformative once you put it on. So I was witnessing that process and thinking a lot about culture and thinking a lot about the reaction that people had to my bean costume. And I just decided, okay, my next carnival, I'm going to create a parade. And that was the birth of it. So I started recruiting people, hey, if you come over to my house on Sunday, I'll make a bunch of food and glue our beans on our jackets together. And the process of doing that actually builds community. So the group started to have this identity. And over time, it just kept growing. And then eventually, we started to have an audience and people coming to our parade. And it just has grown kind of organically over the last 15 years.
So it's been 15 years. So tell us how that's sort of showing up now. So what does the parade look like?
Yeah, so the parade itself is this magical day where for the last 4 days, New Orleans has been deep in Mardi Gras. We call it Deep Gras. And it's a time period where we kind of lose track of everything else around the world. If a war were to break out, we would probably be the last people to know about it. For example, we're parading, we're dancing the streets. And it kind of culminates on Lundi Gras and Mardi Gras. Mardi Gras Day is a giant holiday here in the city. Everything shuts down. There's just endless block parties happening. It's pretty magical. And before our bean parade was created, Lundi Gras was kind of a quiet day to prepare for the big day. And what we've started to do is kind of have these 2 big days in a row now. So when we parade, about 15,000 people will join us. They will dance in the streets with us for the afternoon. And you have hundreds of people in their own bean costumes that they've been working on for months to create. And, because we put all the effort into the costumes, when we wear it, you just have this kind of magical feeling. And then you're surrounded by community. You run into your friends. You dance with your children in the streets. You're marching to the musicians of your city. And it's just the kind of pinnacle of both community and culture. And it's one of the best things that I get to do in my life.
Thanks for joining me for this special bonus episode of Future Fork. If you'd like to hear the full conversations with anyone you heard from today, the links are in the show notes. All right, I'll see you in the next episode. You've been listening to Future Fork, a show that explores the world of food and the decisions we can make today that will shape our future. Future Fork is produced by Disruptive Consulting Solutions and supports the SDG2 Advocacy Hub. For more info, head to the website futureforkpodcast.com. This show was produced with strategy and production support from Wavelength Creative. So you don't miss an episode of Future Fork, make sure to subscribe to or follow the show in your podcast app. And while you're there, leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find the show. I'm Paul Newnham, and I'll see you in the next episode.